Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and today I'm here to talk to you about this, the TWR Supercat. Now in the early 80s, against all the odds, TWR managed to turn a heavy soft GT into a race-winning sensation. And today they are back. The XJS has to be one of the most unlikely ever candidates for a car to be used in competition, and yet TWR shocked us all by using it to win the European Touring Car Championship. To capitalise on their race wins, they released a package of options so that normal people, having bought a standard XJS, could turn it into a TWR. 30 years on, and we have a radical evolution of the original concept, benefiting from modern technology. It looks like a big step forward, but today I also want to find out if the original ethos of the car has been respected. Is this what Tom Walkinshaw himself would have built if he had today's resources at hand? Tom's son Fergus was the chief engineer on the project, while the body was designed by Kaisel Salim. We're going to speak to both of them a bit later on, but first, let's take a deep dive into the technical details. Some resto mods are little more than cosmetic updates. Thankfully, that is not the case here. One of the first clues is this weighs an incredible 300 kilos less than the original car. And to make the most of it, the chassis and running gear have been radically altered. One of the biggest limiting factors in the original car were the front and rear subframes. They were made out of pressed steel and mounted using rubber bushings. That's great for comfort, but it doesn't do very much for performance. So the Supercat has an all-new design which gives the suspension a much more solid platform to work from. The original chassis has been reinforced with tubular steel. This, coupled with the carbon fibre bodywork, make for a much lighter and stiffer structure. The forged monoblock wheels are a design which is specific to TWR. They've gone up from 15 inches on the original car to 18 at the front and 19 at the back. And I think with these projects, there's always a danger on an old car of putting on wheels that are too big. But with the changes in the bodywork, I think they look spectacular. It has custom milled hubs. At the front, double wishbone suspension, which has been redesigned. At the back, it moves from a semi-trailing arm design to a multi-link setup. And the whole thing is kept in check by tractive suspension, which is electronically adjustable from the cabin. The engine is a 5.6 litre supercharged V12 producing 660 horsepower and 730 Newton meters of torque, coupled with a 6-speed gearbox for a more analog feel. The interior has also been thoroughly reworked. There is a nod and there are some details that hint back to the original car, but it is improved in one crucial respect. I do not fit in a normal XJS. Although it's a big car externally, inside there is practically no room. In this, because they have removed the rear seats, allows the whole assembly to move back. You've got a much better driving position with much more room. There is a nod to the older cars, for example, the design of the seat, the way that the seats are stitched. Although they are custom made for this, it harks back to the original. In the same way, you have the TWR specific wheel here, and the instrumentation, which is by LCD, is a reconstruction of the originals, even with the little tumblers on the side. The climate controls look absolutely fantastic. The finished version will have some labeling on there. On the transmission tunnel, the controls for how the car behaves. So the first one on the right hand side is traction control. On the far left, you have the suspension, and in the middle is the driving mode. Now the clever and interesting thing here is they are completely independent from each other. The driving mode will alter things like how heavy the steering is, how sharp the throttle is, but you can alter that independently from the suspension and from the traction control. So if you wanted to, on the road, you can have it set up much sharper in terms of the steering and the throttle while retaining a comfortable ride. Outside there is a much more aggressive look, complemented by a track which is almost 20 centimeters wider. The bodywork is all carbon and was designed by Kaisel Salim with input from Magnus Walker. Subtle? It isn't, but then the original car wasn't either. Perhaps the most surprising thing for me is the very competitive starting price of £225,000. Let's have a quick chat with John about the ethos behind the project. So this is John Kane. He is the co-founder of the rejuvenated TWR. Ever since Singer started the ball rolling in 2010, a lot of new products have come onto the market. How would you say that the Supercat differentiates itself from other offerings?
You mentioned Singer, but I don't like to compare too much, but if we were to, it would be more along the DLS line. So completely bespoke build from the ground up. When I set out with this project with Fergus, we really did want the best of all worlds. So we wanted to be able to tour or go on a road trip. As you can see, we've got enough luggage to take 4 suitcases, a bunch of golf clubs, and you can go on a long trip in comfort. That's the flexibility of the suspension that we have in this car. You can go and do that, but at the same time, you could go to a track whilst you're going there. A lot of our engineers and most of our team are all motorsport background. So everything's been built with durability in mind. So it's all about getting this to be that best of all worlds kind of vehicle that doesn't exist in my mind. I've got a collection of cars and I have nothing that serves that purpose.
So Fergus, I know it's a bit of a monster, 660 horsepower, lots of torque as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you went down this route? Well, for a start, the engine block. Is it still based on, you know, the Jag V12?
Yeah, it's still the original engine block that came out of the car. When we stripped the cars down, we removed the engines, turned down our on-site engine room. From there they get remachined, reworked, new liners, and then built up with new pistons and rods to our own design. We modified the cylinder heads, combustion chamber. We then install a full new valve train, which is significantly lighter than the original setup, which allows us to rev the engine higher safely.
I noticed it is supercharged. I haven't got anything against that, but I'm wondering, why didn't you go for normally aspirated or turbocharged?
There's a couple of factors with that. Because we're building what is primarily a road car, even though it needs to make the power to perform, it needs to have good drivability. And turbocharging, you can find that you get a little bit of a lag, and then the rush of power comes in later, which some people enjoy that kind of driving experience, but it's not in keeping with the theme of the car. Being supercharged, but it's a centrifugal supercharger rather than positive displacement, that power comes in extremely linear. The reason we didn't go down the NA large capacity was twofold. One, to make power NA, you tend to lose the low end drivability to make the peak power. But being supercharged allows us also to have that balance and keep a bit of fuel economy in it as well.
And now, to finish off, a quick chat with the designer. Kaisel, I saw it in the pictures and I thought it looked great. I've now seen it in the flesh and I think it looks even better. So can you tell us a little bit what you are aiming for generally with this design?
The original XJS base design by Malcolm Sayer it spoke for itself in terms of its design. It was quite an iconic silhouette. The year the car came around, 70s, 80s, that era of design for me personally is a big inspiration to myself and my work. It's kind of utilizing an era where IMSA race cars were full flare, like crazy race machines, incredibly wide. And so I really wanted to adapt that ethos to this and what this car stands for, but most importantly, making sure that the design matches the performance as well. So making everything functional or have a purpose. We actually now have, rear flying buttresses that are fully functional and assist with airflow.
So on the original car, there's just a window there.
Yeah.
It comes down and then the rear screen. Here,
exactly, yes.
The airflow is directed back
down over the rear spoiler. We've spent thousands of hours working in, CFD analysis, aero work to make sure everything that we've done, every line on the car is functional in its purpose. This section of the car brings me a lot of joy. Everything is specifically done. The channeled roof, which kind of lines flow from the bonnet of the car all the way down to the center, so the roof spoiler, so air is flowing underneath that. Speaks to the rear of the car as well, using design language inspired by the XJR9, XJR15, XJ220, which you'll notably see in the rear diffuser of the car as well. So kind of trying to bring that design language into this vehicle, into the TWR Supercat, it was a pleasure to work on.
A difficult project to get right this, but I really liked it. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to see what the original car was like, click here.